By noon, the whole company saw him sleeping with his head on the security desk, but nobody saw the bloodshot eyes, the trembling hands, or the empty coffee cups hidden beneath his chair. Nobody knew that while the CEO was preparing to fire him in front of everyone, Arvin Hale had just spent 48 straight hours fighting invisible criminals who were seconds away from destroying everything she had built. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and looking deeper before judging someone, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries. Your support helps more emotional stories like this reach hearts that need them. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon in downtown Seattle, the kind of day when glass towers reflected sunlight like polished knives and people hurried through the streets with phones in their hands and worry on their faces. Inside the 27th floor of Veritech, a fast-growing medical software company, everything looked perfect from the outside. The lobby smelled of fresh flowers, the floors shined like mirrors, and digital screens displayed cheerful messages about innovation, trust, and saving lives through technology. But behind the polished walls, the company was shaking. 48 hours earlier, a group of hackers had slipped into the system that stored patient records for hospitals across the country, and if they succeeded, thousands of private files could be stolen, surgeries could be delayed, and the company's reputation could be ruined before sunset. Arvin Hale was not the kind of man people noticed. He was 32, quiet, thin from skipped meals, and usually wore the same dark hoodie under his office jacket because the server room was always cold. He was the cybersecurity analyst who came in before sunrise and left after most people had forgotten his name. Some employees thought he was strange because he rarely joined lunch conversations. Others thought he was rude because he answered in short sentences. Nobody knew he was raising his little sister's son after she died in a highway accident. Nobody knew he worked nights not because he loved overtime, but because hospital bills and school fees were swallowing his paycheck before it reached his bank account. The CEO, Selene Voss, knew even less. She was sharp, disciplined, and feared by almost everyone. She had built Veritech from a cramped apartment after her father died waiting for a hospital system to process his records. To her, the company was not just business, it was grief turned into purpose. That was why she had no patience for laziness. When she walked into the security operations room that afternoon and saw Arvin asleep at his workstation while alerts still glowed across the screens, something inside her snapped. His face was buried in his folded arms, his badge hanging crooked from his neck, and his fingers still rested near the keyboard as if he had fallen in the middle of typing. Selene did not see a hero. She saw betrayal. The room went silent when she entered. Engineers froze. A junior analyst named Priya lowered her eyes. The head of operations, Nolan Greer, stood near the glass wall with a folder already prepared. He had never liked Arvin, mostly because Arvin kept finding flaws in systems Nolan claimed were secure. Now Nolan watched with the calm satisfaction of a man waiting for a door to close on someone else. Selene's voice cut through the room, cold and controlled. She said Arvin's name once, and when he did not wake, she said it again louder. Arvin startled upright, blinking as if he had returned from another world. For a second, he looked terrified, not guilty, just deeply lost. Then he saw Selene, saw everyone watching, and tried to stand, but his knees nearly failed him. She told him he was done. No warning, no private meeting, no explanation. In front of the team that had watched him survive on vending machine sandwiches for 2 days, she fired him for sleeping during a crisis. Arvin did not argue. That hurt Priya most. He just nodded slowly, as if her words had landed somewhere already numb. His lips moved once, maybe to explain, maybe to apologize, but no sound came out. He picked up his worn backpack from under the desk. One strap was torn, and a child's small dinosaur keychain dangled from the zipper. As he walked past the screens, another red alert flashed, but no one noticed because everyone was watching the man who had been blamed for collapsing. Outside, the afternoon sun hit Arvin's face like punishment. He stood on the sidewalk below the tower, surrounded by strangers, holding a cardboard box with a cracked coffee mug, an old photo of his sister, and a drawing from his nephew that said, "Uncle Arvin is my superhero." For the first time in 48 hours, he had nowhere to run, nothing to defend, and no one asking him to save anything. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his nephew's school reminding him about a parent meeting. Arvin stared at it until the words blurred. Inside Veritech, Selene returned to the crisis room expecting order to return. Instead, the room became chaos within minutes. Systems that had seemed stable began failing one after another. Backup servers refused authentication. Hospital clients started calling. A major children's hospital reported that its scheduling dashboard had frozen. Then Priya, pale and shaking, found something hidden deep in the logs, a line of code that had been quarantined but not fully removed. It had Arvin's signature on the containment rule. He had not been sleeping through the attack. He had been holding it back. Selene demanded a full timeline. What appeared on the main screen slowly changed the temperature of the room. Arvin had logged in Sunday evening at 6:11 p.m. after detecting suspicious activity. He had isolated the first breach before the automated systems even raised an alarm. At 2:43 a.m., he rerouted malicious traffic away from hospital networks. At 9:20 a.m., he discovered the attackers had stolen employee credentials. At 4:05 p.m., he blocked a ransomware trigger hidden inside a software update. For 2 nights and 2 days, every time the hackers found a door, Arvin had thrown his body against it. Priya's voice broke as she explained that Arvin had asked for help, but the escalation tickets had been delayed. Nolan had marked them as low priority because he thought Arvin was overreacting. The same Nolan who now stood silent near the window had ignored the warnings, then prepared the termination file when Arvin finally collapsed. Selene turned toward him, and for the first time that day, fear flickered across his face. But there was no time for blame. The hackers were still inside the outer layers, and Arvin had been the only one who understood the trap. The final attack was scheduled to trigger at 3 p.m. It was already 2:27. Selene called Arvin. He did not answer the first time. Or the second. On the third call, he picked up, his voice rough and distant. Selene did not sound like a CEO then. She sounded like a person who had realized too late that she had wounded someone innocent. She told him the attack was still moving, that they needed him, that she was sorry. There was a long silence on the line. Traffic moved behind him. Somewhere nearby, a bus sighed to a stop. Then Arvin asked about the children's hospital. Not his job. Not his reputation. Not whether she meant the apology. He asked if the hospital system was still online. That question broke something in Selene. Arvin returned 12 minutes later. He did not come back for her. He came back because patients were waiting on systems no one noticed until they failed. He stepped out of the elevator looking smaller than before, with the cardboard box still in his hands. No one clapped. No one knew how to look at him. Selene met him at the door and tried to apologize again, but Arvin simply handed her the box and went to the nearest terminal. His hands trembled so badly that Priya quietly placed a bottle of water beside him and opened a fresh command screen. The next 30 minutes felt like a storm trapped inside glass walls. Arvin moved through the system with exhausted precision, tracing the hackers through false accounts, stolen certificates, and hidden scripts. His eyes were red, his face pale, but his mind was alive in a way that made the room lean toward him. He explained that the attackers wanted them to panic and shut down the wrong server. If they did, the malware would spread through every hospital connection. The only way to stop it was to let the attackers believe they had won, then trap them inside a fake environment while cutting their real access from behind. Selene watched him work, and shame pressed harder with every second. This was the man she had humiliated. This was the employee she had treated like a disposable part. He had been alone in the dark, protecting her dream, while she had seen only a sleeping body and called it failure. At 2:59 p.m., the room stopped breathing. The countdown on the attack script reached its final seconds. Arvin whispered that they had one chance. His finger hovered over the key. The screen flashed red, then black, then filled with lines of data moving too quickly for anyone but him to understand. For 5 terrible seconds, nobody knew if they had lost. Then the hospital dashboards came back online. One by one, the red alerts turned amber, then green. The attackers had been locked out. The room erupted, but Arvin did not celebrate. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and for a frightening moment Priya thought he had stopped breathing. Then he slid sideways from the chair. Selene caught him before he hit the floor. The ambulance arrived at 3:18 p.m. Doctors said it was severe exhaustion, dehydration, stress, and dangerously low blood sugar. Selene rode behind the ambulance in her car, unable to shake the image of the dinosaur keychain on his backpack. At the hospital, she sat outside his room with his cardboard box on her lap. Inside it, she found the drawing from his nephew. The word superhero had been written in blue crayon, the letters uneven and proud. Selene covered her mouth and cried quietly for the first time in years. When Arvin woke that evening, the sky outside had turned golden. His nephew, Milo, sat beside the bed holding his hand, trying to be brave. Selene stood near the doorway, no longer powerful, no longer untouchable, just human. She told Arvin the truth in front of everyone who mattered. She said she had judged him without listening. She said she had mistaken sacrifice for weakness. She said his job was not only restored, but he would lead a new security division with proper staffing, real authority, and no more ignored warnings. Then she looked at Milo and said his uncle had saved thousands of people that day. Arvin did not smile right away. Pain does not vanish just because someone finally tells the truth. He looked at Selene for a long moment, and the silence between them carried every hour he had been unseen. Then he nodded, not because everything was fixed, but because sometimes healing begins with one honest apology and one person willing to change. In the weeks that followed, Veritech became a different place. Nolan resigned after the investigation exposed his negligence. Priya was promoted for speaking up. Selene created a policy that no crisis worker could stay on duty without relief, meals, and rest. She also began walking the floors not as a distant executive, but as someone who wanted to know the names behind the badges. And every Thursday afternoon, she visited the security room with coffee, sandwiches, and a quiet reminder that no one should have to be a hero alone. Arvin changed too. He still worked hard, but he learned to let others carry part of the weight. He made it to Milo's school meeting. He helped him build a cardboard robot for Science Day. He slept 8 hours for the first time in months. And on the wall above his new desk, he pinned the drawing that had survived the worst day of his career. Under Milo's blue crayon words, Selene added a small framed note that said, "A company is not saved by systems alone. It is saved by people we remember to see." If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder not to judge too quickly, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries for more stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. Special request, comment, "I see you," for every quiet person fighting battles no one knows about. Because sometimes the person we call lazy is exhausted from saving everyone else. Sometimes the person we overlook is the one holding the whole world together. And sometimes, one second chance does not just save a job, it saves a heart that was almost broken by being invisible.